trust compounds faster than money. Every interaction you have today either adds to or subtracts from an invisible account that determines whether people pick up when you call, whether opportunities flow your way without effort, and whether your mistakes get forgiven or become permanent marks against you. Most people stumble through life hoping trust will somehow materialize through good intentions and time. But there's actually a mathematical formula that generates trust predictably, and you can start using it within the next 10 minutes. Chapter 1. The Trust Advantage Formula. The formula itself is deceptively simple. Consistency, transparency, reliability equals trust capital. But here's what nobody tells you: each variable operates on a different timeline and affects different parts of the human brain. Consistency triggers the pattern recognition centers that make people feel safe. Transparency activates the threat detection systems that determine whether someone is friend or foe. Reliability hits the reward pathways that create actual addiction to your presence. When you understand how to manipulate all three variables simultaneously, you create an exponential effect that most people never achieve in a lifetime of trying. Right now, you're probably operating at about 30% of your trust-building capacity. That's not an insult, it's just math. Most people score around 5 out of 10 on consistency, maybe 4 out of 10 on transparency, and roughly 6 out of 10 on reliability. Multiply those together, and you get 120 out of a possible 1,000, barely scratching the surface of what's possible. The difference between you and someone who seems to effortlessly attract opportunities isn't talent or luck. They've simply figured out how to operate at 70% or 80% capacity by making small adjustments to each variable. A person scoring 8 on consistency, 8 on transparency, and 9 on reliability hits 576, nearly 5 times the trust capital from improvements that are completely within your reach. The beauty of trust capital is that it works like compound interest in reverse. Instead of waiting years to see results, trust compounds daily, sometimes hourly. Every text you respond to within a specific time frame, every promise you keep no matter how small, every moment of radical honesty when a white lie would be easier, these micro deposits accumulate faster than you'd believe possible. Within 30 days of applying the formula consciously, people start treating you differently. Within 60 days, opportunities appear that seemed impossible before. Within 90 days, you're operating in a completely different reality, where doors open before you even knock. Let me show you exactly how each variable works, starting with consistency. Consistency isn't about being perfect or never changing. It's about creating predictable patterns that allow people's brains to relax around you. The human nervous system is constantly scanning for threats, and inconsistency registers as danger. When you respond to messages at wildly different speeds, when your mood shifts unpredictably, when your standards change based on convenience, you're triggering ancient alarm systems that mark you as unsafe. But when you establish simple patterns responding to important messages within 4 hours, maintaining the same energy level in similar situations, applying the same standards regardless of who's watching, people's brains literally change their chemical response to your presence. The consistency variable has 3 components that multiply together: temporal consistency, timing; emotional consistency, energy; and standard consistency, principles. Temporal consistency means creating rhythms people can count on. Pick 3 communication windows during your day and stick to them religiously. Mine are 9 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m. Everyone who matters knows that if they message me, they'll hear back at the next window. This simple structure eliminates 80% of communication anxiety and makes you appear incredibly reliable without actually being available 24/7. Emotional consistency doesn't mean being a robot. It means your emotional range in similar situations stays predictable. If you're warm and engaging during good times but cold and distant during challenges, you're creating trust withdrawal. The secret is establishing an emotional home base, a default energy level you return to regardless of circumstances. This baseline becomes your signature, the thing people count on. When they know what version of you they'll encounter, their guard drops automatically. Standard consistency is perhaps the most powerful yet most violated aspect. Every time you bend your rules for convenience, every time you make an exception based on who's watching, you're not just losing trust with others, you're destroying the most important trust relationship you have, the one with yourself. Pick 5 non-negotiable standards for how you operate. Mine include: never speaking negatively about someone who isn't present, answering direct questions directly, even when uncomfortable, and admitting mistakes before anyone else points them out. These standards become your trust signature, the things people know they can count on regardless of situation or pressure. Transparency, the second variable in our formula, operates differently than most people assume. Radical transparency isn't about oversharing or having no boundaries. It's about strategic visibility into your decision-making process, your limitations, and your intentions. When people can see how you think, they stop wondering about your motives. When they understand your constraints, they stop taking delays personally. When they know your intentions, they interpret your actions generously rather than suspiciously. The transparency variable breaks down into 3 types: process transparency, limitation transparency, and intention transparency. Process transparency means letting people see how you make decisions. Instead of just announcing conclusions, share the factors you're weighing. Instead of just saying no, explain the criteria something would need to meet for a yes. This doesn't make you weak or indecisive. It makes you trustworthy because people can predict your future decisions based on understanding your process. Limitation transparency revolutionizes relationships because it eliminates false expectations. Most trust breaks occur not from malice, but from mismatched expectations. When you're clear about what you can and cannot do, when you share your capacity constraints upfront, when you acknowledge your weaknesses before they become problems, you're preventing trust failures before they occur. Tell people you're terrible with names before you forget theirs. Admit you're struggling with bandwidth before you miss a deadline. Share that you're not a morning person before that early meeting where you seem disconnected. These admissions don't make you look weak. They make you look self-aware and trustworthy. Intention transparency is the master key that unlocks trust at scale. People spend enormous mental energy trying to figure out what others want from them. When you make your intentions explicit, you free them from this exhausting guessing game. Start conversations by stating what you're hoping to achieve. Begin requests by explaining why you're asking. End interactions by clarifying what you're planning to do with the information or help you've received. This level of clarity feels uncomfortable at first because we're trained to be indirect, but it creates trust at stunning speed. Reliability, our third variable, goes far beyond simply doing what you say you'll do. True reliability means creating systems that ensure you deliver, even when you don't feel like it, even when circumstances change, even when nobody's watching. It's about building an infrastructure of trustworthiness that operates independently of your mood, energy, or circumstances. Reliability has 3 levels: basic reliability, doing what you promised; proactive reliability, anticipating needs before they're expressed; and systematic reliability, creating structures that ensure delivery. Most people struggle with basic reliability because they rely on memory and motivation. But memory fails and motivation fluctuates. The solution is creating external systems that guarantee follow-through regardless of internal state. Start with a simple capture system for every commitment you make, no matter how small. The moment words leave your mouth suggesting you'll do something, it goes into the system. I'll think about that goes in the system. Let me look into that goes in the system. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime goes in the system. Then create a review rhythm where you process these captures and either convert them to real commitments or explicitly release them. This simple practice will revolutionize your reliability within days. Proactive reliability is where trust turns into magnetism. This means solving problems before they're problems, addressing concerns before they're voiced, delivering value before it's requested. The secret is pattern recognition. Start noting what people typically need after certain events. What questions usually follow certain statements. What problems typically emerge from certain situations. Then address these proactively. Send the follow-up information before they ask. Share the resource before they realize they need it. Solve the downstream problem before it arrives at their door. Systematic reliability is the highest level of trust building because it shows you've invested in infrastructure to support your relationships. This means creating templates for common interactions, establishing automated reminders for important dates, building checklists for complex commitments. When people see you have systems supporting your reliability, they trust you with bigger things because they know you're not depending on memory or mood. Now comes the practical part: calculating your current trust score. Take an honest assessment of your performance in each area on a scale of 1 to 10. For consistency, how predictable are your response times? How stable is your emotional baseline? How firmly do you maintain your standards? Average these 3 numbers for your consistency score. For transparency, how clearly do you share your decision-making process? How openly do you acknowledge limitations? How explicitly do you state intentions? Average these for your transparency score. For reliability, what percentage of commitments do you fulfill? How often do you proactively solve problems? How many systems support your follow-through? Average these for your reliability score. Multiply your 3 scores together. Then multiply by 10 to get a score out of 1,000. If you scored 5 on consistency, 4 on transparency, and 6 on reliability, your trust capital is 120. Now here's where it gets interesting. Improving each score by just 2 points, completely achievable in 30 days, would take you to 6 times 8 equals 336. Nearly tripling your trust capital from modest improvements. The transformation begins with trust triggers, small, specific actions that signal trustworthiness without requiring personality overhauls or lifestyle changes. A trust trigger can be as simple as always responding to messages with at least an acknowledgement within 4 hours. Even if it's just, "Got this," will respond properly by specific time. Another trigger might be starting every commitment with a specific phrase like, "You can count on me to," which forces you to be explicit about what you're promising. A third might be ending every interaction with, "The next step I'm taking is," which creates clarity and accountability. The power of trust triggers is their compound effect. Each one seems insignificant in isolation, but stack 5 or 6 together, and suddenly you're operating at a completely different level. People can't quite put their finger on what's changed, but they feel safer around you, more confident in your abilities, more eager to include you in opportunities. Choose 3 trust triggers to implement immediately. Make them specific, measurable, and small enough that you can maintain them even on your worst day. One should address consistency, perhaps a specific response rhythm or emotional baseline practice. One should address transparency, maybe a commitment to share your reasoning or acknowledge a limitation in every significant interaction. One should address reliability, possibly a capture system or a proactive check-in rhythm. The mistake most people make is trying to improve all variables dramatically at once. This is like trying to juggle while learning to ride a unicycle. Instead, focus on moving each variable up by just 1 point over the next 30 days. This modest goal is achievable and sustainable, yet the mathematical impact is profound. Moving from 555,125 trust capital to 666,216 trust capital is a 73% increase from incredibly modest improvements. Trust capital also operates with different audiences simultaneously, and your scores might vary significantly across contexts. You might have high trust capital with your family, 8-7 to 9 equals 504. But low trust capital at work, 5-4 to 6 equals 120. The formula helps you diagnose exactly where the gaps exist and what specific improvements would yield the biggest returns. Often, simply taking what works in one context and applying it to another can create dramatic improvements. There's a multiplier effect that occurs when your trust capital exceeds 500. At this level, trust becomes self-reinforcing. People start assuming positive intent, even when situations are ambiguous. They become your advocates without being asked. They create opportunities for you to succeed because your success reflects well on their judgment in trusting you. This is the level where trust truly becomes an unfair advantage, where the same action that might be questioned from someone else is celebrated when it comes from you. The trust advantage formula also reveals why some people seem to lose trust catastrophically from single events. When one variable drops to near zero, it tanks the entire equation. Someone might have perfect reliability 10 and good transparency 8. But if their consistency drops to 2 during a crisis, their trust capital plummets from 800 to 160. This mathematical reality explains why maintaining minimum thresholds across all variables matters more than perfecting any single one. Beyond personal relationships, trust capital affects every system you interact with. Algorithms notice consistency and reward it with reach. Organizations track reliability and respond with opportunities. Communities sense transparency and reciprocate with support. The same formula that transforms personal relationships also transforms your relationship with institutions, platforms, and communities. The formula also explains why trust builds slowly but breaks quickly. Building from 5 to 8 in any variable requires sustained effort over time. But dropping from 8 to 3 can happen in a single moment of inconsistency, opacity, or unreliability. This asymmetry isn't unfair, it's evolutionary. Our brains are wired to weight negative trust signals more heavily than positive ones, because, from a survival perspective, trusting someone dangerous is far more costly than missing out on trusting someone safe. Starting tomorrow morning, you'll face dozens of micro-decisions that either build or erode trust capital. The speed of your response to a text, the completeness of your answer to a question, the energy you bring to an interaction, each of these is a vote for or against your trustworthiness. The formula gives you a framework for making these decisions consciously rather than randomly. The compound effect accelerates when you start measuring and tracking your trust capital weekly. Every Sunday, score yourself on the 9 subcomponents, 3 for each variable. Note which ones improved, which ones declined, and what specific behaviors drove the changes. This simple practice creates awareness that naturally drives improvement. You'll find yourself catching trust-eroding behaviors before they happen, simply because you know you'll have to face them in your weekly review. Your trust capital score isn't just a number, it's a prediction of your future opportunities, relationships, and influence. Every 100-point increase represents a fundamental shift in how the world responds to you. At 200, you're fighting for attention and opportunity. At 400, things start flowing toward you. At 600, you become magnetic. At 800, you operate in a different reality where the primary challenge isn't getting opportunities, but choosing among them. The most powerful aspect of the trust advantage formula is that it's entirely within your control. You don't need permission, resources, or special circumstances to start improving your scores. The variables respond to intention and attention, not talent or advantages. Someone with average abilities operating at high trust capital will consistently outperform someone with exceptional abilities operating at low trust capital. The trust advantage formula becomes even more powerful when you realize it applies to your relationship with yourself. Your internal trust capital, how much you trust yourself to follow through, to make good decisions, to handle challenges, operates on the same mathematical principles. Every promise you make to yourself and keep, every moment of honest self-assessment, every system you build to support your own success multiplies into self-trust that becomes the foundation for all other trust relationships. The formula reveals something profound. Trust isn't actually about morality or character in the way we typically think about it. It's about creating predictable patterns that allow human brains to relax and connect. This isn't manipulation. It's recognition that trust operates according to psychological and mathematical principles that we can understand and work with rather than against. The next 30 days will determine whether this remains an interesting concept or becomes a transformation in how you move through the world. The choice isn't whether to apply the formula, you're already applying it unconsciously every day. The choice is whether to apply it consciously, strategically, and systematically. Your current trust capital score, whatever it is, represents years of unconscious patterns. But conscious application of the formula can create more trust capital in the next 90 days than you've built in the past 90 months. The Trust Advantage formula isn't just another framework to understand, it's an operating system for life that, once installed, runs continuously in the background, multiplying every effort, amplifying every interaction, and compounding every opportunity. The formula is simple enough to remember, but sophisticated enough to transform every relationship you have, including the one with yourself. Your new trust capital score starts calculating now, with the very next interaction you have, the next commitment you make, the next moment you choose consciousness over habit. Chapter 2. The compound effect of micro-commitments. Small promises change everything. While everyone else obsesses over grand gestures and major commitments, the people who build unshakable trust focus on something radically different: promises so tiny, they seem almost insignificant. These micro-commitments, often taking less than 2 minutes to complete, create a compound effect that transforms how people perceive and respond to you. The math is staggering. Keeping just 5 micro-commitments daily generates 150 trust-building interactions monthly, 1,800 annually. Each one seems like nothing, but together they rewire your entire reputation. The traditional approach to commitment keeping is fundamentally broken. People make big promises they can't keep, medium promises they struggle to keep, and ignore small promises entirely. This creates a trust deficit that follows them everywhere. They're the person who says, "Let's grab lunch soon," but never follows up, who promises to send that article but forgets, who agrees to make an introduction but lets it slip their mind. Each broken micro-promise seems too small to matter, but the cumulative effect is devastating. Your brain registers every broken commitment, no matter how small, and adjusts its trust calibration accordingly. Micro-commitments work because they hack the way human memory encodes trust. When someone experiences you keeping a tiny promise, their brain doesn't weight it by size, it simply registers "promise kept" and adds a trust point. The person who said they'd send you that link and actually does gets nearly the same trust boost as someone who completes a major project on time. This seems irrational until you understand that our brains evolved to track reliability patterns, not calculate promise magnitudes. The 2-minute trust rule transforms this insight into practical action. Any commitment requiring less than 2 minutes gets completed immediately, no exceptions, no delays, no task lists. Someone asks for a quick recommendation. Write it now. Promise to send contact information. Do it before the conversation ends. Said you'd check something. Check it instantly. This rule eliminates the mental overhead of tracking micro-commitments and guarantees a 100% completion rate for your smallest promises. Implementation starts with radical awareness of the commitments flowing from your mouth. Most people make 20-30 micro-commitments daily without realizing it. "I'll text you." "Let me send you that." "I'll look into it." "I'll let you know." Each of these creates a trust debt that must be paid. The moment you hear yourself making any commitment, no matter how casual, your brain should trigger an immediate decision. Complete it now if it takes under 2 minutes, or upgrade it to a tracked commitment if it takes longer. The power emerges when you create what I call a commitment cascade, a system where each fulfilled micro-commitment automatically triggers the next one. You send the article you promised, which reminds you to make the introduction you mentioned, which prompts you to schedule the call you suggested. Each action takes less than 2 minutes, but the cascade creates unstoppable momentum. Within days, you become known as the person who always follows through, even on the smallest things. This approach requires rewiring your relationship with the word yes. Most people say yes to appear helpful, then fail to deliver, which is worse than saying no. With micro-commitments, you become surgically precise about what you agree to. You either commit completely or decline gracefully. There's no middle ground of maybe or I'll try or if I get time. This clarity alone transforms how people experience you. The tracking system for micro-commitments must be frictionless or it fails. Complexity kills consistency. The simplest approach uses a single note on your phone with today's date and a running list of every micro-commitment made. As you complete each one, you mark it with a check mark. At day's end, any unmarked items either get completed immediately or get renegotiated. This visual representation of promise keeping becomes addictive. The satisfaction of a fully checked list drives behavior change naturally. Scoring your micro-commitment performance gamifies trust building in a way that makes it genuinely entertaining. Each kept promise earns a point. Each broken promise costs 3 points. This 3-1 penalty reflects the psychological reality that trust breaks faster than it builds. Start each week at 0 and track your score. Most people discover they're operating at negative scores, initially breaking more micro-commitments than they keep. Simply bringing awareness to this dynamic creates immediate improvement. The compound effect accelerates through what I call commitment stacking, deliberately creating chains of micro-commitments that build on each other. You promise to send an article, then promise to share your thoughts on it, then promise to introduce the author to someone who'd benefit. Each commitment takes under 2 minutes, but the stack creates disproportionate value and trust. People experience you as someone who doesn't just follow through, but exceeds expectations consistently. Micro-commitments also transform self-trust, which underlies all external trust relationships. Every tiny promise you make to yourself, and keep drinking that glass of water, taking that short walk, reading that single page builds internal credibility. This self-trust becomes the foundation for larger achievements. Someone who can't trust themselves to floss daily won't trust themselves to build a business. The micro-commitment practice builds both simultaneously. The 30-day challenge that rewires your trust patterns forever works like this. Make and keep exactly 5 micro-commitments daily, no more, no less. 3 should be external to others, 2 internal to yourself. Each must be specific, measurable, and completable within 2 minutes. Track them visibly. Calculate your weekly score. The constraint of exactly 5 forces intentionality about what you promise and ensures you don't overcommit. Week 1 typically feels awkward. You catch yourself making casual commitments you can't keep. You realize how often you say things like, "I'll think about it," without intending to. You discover the gap between your self-image as reliable and the reality of your follow-through. This discomfort is necessary. It's your brain recognizing the pattern it needs to change. Week 2 brings the first breakthrough. The 2-minute trust rule becomes automatic. You find yourself completing micro-commitments before your brain can make excuses. People start commenting on your reliability, though they can't quite articulate what's changed. Your internal score starts trending positive. The dopamine hit from completing commitments becomes something you crave. Week 3 is where compound effects become visible. Your reputation shifts. People start coming to you with opportunities because they know you'll handle them. Your confidence increases because you trust yourself to follow through. The practice requires less conscious effort as the pattern becomes embedded. You're no longer trying to keep micro-commitments, it's just how you operate. Week 4 solidifies the transformation. The practice feels natural, even necessary. Not completing a micro-commitment immediately creates discomfort that drives action. Your monthly total approaches 150 kept promises. The compound effect of these small actions creates trust capital that would typically take years to build through traditional methods. The commitment cascade becomes more sophisticated as you practice. You learn to create strategic sequences of micro-commitments that build toward larger outcomes. Each small promise kept makes the next one easier, creating momentum that carries you through bigger challenges. The person who reliably sends thank you notes within 24 hours has an easier time delivering major projects on schedule because the muscle of follow-through is already developed. Language precision becomes crucial for micro-commitment success. Replace vague promises with specific ones. Instead of, "I'll get back to you," say, "I'll email you by noon tomorrow." Instead of, "Let's connect soon," say, "I'll send you 3 time options for next week." This specificity makes commitments trackable and completion measurable. Vagueness is where trust goes to die. The ripple effects extend beyond direct trust building. Keeping micro-commitments reduces cognitive load because you're not carrying mental debt. It improves sleep because you're not lying awake remembering things you forgot to do. It enhances creativity because your brain isn't spending energy tracking unfulfilled promises. The practice literally frees mental resources for higher-level thinking. Micro-commitments also reveal character in ways grand gestures never could. Anyone can show up for the big moments when everyone's watching. But the person who remembers to send the podcast recommendation they casually mentioned, who follows up on the coffee introduction they suggested, who checks in when they said they would, that person demonstrates genuine integrity. Character isn't built in dramatic moments, but in the accumulation of kept micro-promises. The practice exposes the lie of, "I'm too busy. Everyone has 2 minutes." The issue isn't time but priority. When you adopt the 2-minute trust rule, you stop using busyness as an excuse for unreliability. You either do it immediately or explicitly decline. This honesty with yourself and others creates refreshing clarity in all relationships. Micro-commitments become especially powerful in professional contexts where trust directly translates to opportunity. The colleague who always sends meeting notes within an hour, who consistently shares relevant resources, who reliably makes promised introductions, that person becomes indispensable. Not through grand achievements, but through accumulated micro-reliability that makes them the safest bet in any situation. The scoring system evolves as you advance. Start tracking not just completion but speed. A micro-commitment completed within 1 hour scores higher than one completed within 24 hours. This incentivizes immediate action and prevents accumulation. The goal isn't just keeping promises, but keeping them with velocity that surprises and delights people. Common failure points in micro-commitment practice are predictable and preventable. The first is overpromising in enthusiasm. Excitement makes you commit to more than you can deliver. The solution is a 24-hour rule for any commitment beyond the immediate 2-minute variety. This cooling-off period prevents enthusiasm from creating trust debt. The second failure point is treating some people's micro-commitments as more important than others. Your brain might prioritize following through for important people while neglecting everyday interactions. This creates inconsistency that undermines trust. The practice demands equal treatment. Every micro-commitment matters equally regardless of the recipient. The third failure point is exception making. Just this once becomes a pattern that erodes the practice. The power of micro-commitments comes from their absoluteness. No exceptions for tired, busy, or distracted. The commitment exists or it doesn't. It's kept or it isn't. This binary clarity is what makes the practice transformational. Recovery from broken micro-commitments requires swift action. The moment you realize you've failed to keep one, acknowledge it immediately, apologize specifically, and make immediate amends if possible. Don't let broken micro-commitments fester. The damage compounds with time. Quick acknowledgement and correction can actually build trust by demonstrating awareness and accountability. Advanced practitioners create micro-commitment loops that generate continuous value. You commit to sending weekly resources to someone, each one taking under 2 minutes to share. They commit to providing feedback, also under 2 minutes. This creates a value exchange that builds trust bilaterally while requiring minimal time investment. These loops become the infrastructure of high-trust relationships. The measurement system should include both quantity and quality metrics. Track not just how many micro-commitments you keep, but their impact. A promise to introduce 2 valuable connections scores higher than a promise to send a meme. This doesn't mean avoiding small commitments, but being strategic about which ones you make when you have limited capacity. Micro-commitments reshape your internal dialogue. Instead of "I should" or "I need to," you think "I will by specific time" or "I won't." This precision eliminates the gray zone where most trust erosion occurs. Your word becomes binary: yes or no, done or not done, committed or declined. This clarity is refreshing in a world of maybes and will sees. The compound effect becomes undeniable after 90 days. 3 months of keeping 5 micro-commitments daily means 450 kept promises. Each person in your life has experienced multiple instances of your reliability. Your reputation has shifted from intention to execution. Trust has become your default state, rather than something you have to earn repeatedly. The practice also reveals who deserves your trust. People who reciprocate micro-commitments, who follow through on small promises, who demonstrate reliability in minor matters, these become your inner circle. Those who consistently break micro-commitments, regardless of their grand promises or good intentions, reveal themselves as trust risks. Micro-commitments transform time perception. 2 minutes feels like nothing, but 10 micro-commitments daily equals 20 minutes of trust building. That's 140 minutes weekly, 600 minutes monthly. 10 hours per month of pure trust building activity, hidden in 2-minute increments that feel effortless. The math of transformation hides in these tiny spaces. The neurological rewiring from consistent micro-commitment keeping is measurable. Brain scans show increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the region associated with conflict monitoring and resolution. Your brain literally becomes better at recognizing and resolving the tension between making and keeping commitments. The practice doesn't just change behavior, it changes your neural architecture. Social dynamics shift when you become known for micro-commitment reliability. People start protecting your time because they know you'll honor whatever you commit to. They become more selective about what they ask of you. They value your yes more highly because they know it means something. Your reliability elevates the quality of requests you receive. The commitment cascade extends to habit formation. Each kept micro-commitment makes the next health, productivity, or relationship habit easier to establish. The person who reliably keeps micro-commitments has already built the neural pathways for habit formation. New habits stick faster because the infrastructure of follow-through already exists. Micro-commitments become a diagnostic tool for relationship health. Track the ratio of kept to broken micro-commitments in any relationship: romantic, professional, or friendship. Relationships with high ratios thrive. Those with low ratios struggle. This metric predicts relationship success better than any amount of talking about feelings or values. The practice generates what psychologists call cognitive consonance alignment between your actions and self-concept. Most people live in cognitive dissonance, seeing themselves as reliable while consistently breaking small promises. Micro-commitment practice closes this gap, creating internal harmony that reduces stress and increases well-being. Energy management improves dramatically when you stop carrying broken commitments. Each unkept promise drains mental energy, even if unconsciously. Clearing these debts through immediate completion or explicit renegotiation frees enormous energy for creative and strategic thinking. The practice isn't about doing more, but about completing what you commit to. The social proof of micro-commitment keeping compounds exponentially. Each person who experiences your reliability tells others. Your reputation precedes you. Opportunities flow toward you because people know you're safe to trust with them. The compound effect creates a virtuous cycle where reliability attracts opportunity, which provides more chances to demonstrate reliability. Your relationship with your word fundamentally changes through micro-commitment practice. Words stop being cheap social lubricant and become expensive currency you spend carefully. This linguistic precision extends beyond commitments to all communication. You become someone whose words carry weight because they're always backed by action. The challenge isn't finding micro commitments to make, but being selective about which ones serve your larger purposes. Every micro commitment is an investment of future time and present credibility. The practice teaches you to invest both wisely, creating maximum trust return on minimum time investment. Micro commitments become the foundation for macro achievements. The person who can't send a promised email won't deliver a major project. But the person who never misses a micro commitment has already proven they can handle anything. Trust built through small promises becomes the platform for big opportunities. The scoring system creates objective feedback in an area typically governed by subjective perception. You might feel reliable, but the numbers don't lie. Conversely, you might feel like you're failing, but a positive score proves you're building trust consistently. This objectivity prevents both false confidence and unnecessary self-criticism. The 30-day challenge is just the beginning. Once micro-commitment keeping becomes automatic, you can increase complexity. Add commitment chains where completing one triggers another. Create commitment partnerships where you and another person hold each other accountable. Build commitment systems that generate value automatically through kept promises. The compound effect of micro-commitments proves that transformation doesn't require dramatic change. Small promises kept consistently create extraordinary results. The person who sends every thank you note, makes every introduction, shares every resource they mention, that person operates in a different universe of trust and opportunity. The path to that universe starts with your next 2-minute promise. Chapter 3. Strategic Vulnerability. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's mathematics. Every interaction involves a calculation your brain makes unconsciously. Reveal or conceal, share or shield, open or protect. Most people get this calculation wrong because they treat vulnerability as an all-or-nothing proposition. They either overshare catastrophically or remain locked behind walls of perfect presentation. Strategic vulnerability operates on an entirely different principle. Calculated revelation that builds trust faster than years of flawless performance ever could. The traditional model of professional and personal relationships suggests that strength comes from never showing cracks. Hide your mistakes, mask your uncertainties, project unwavering confidence. This approach worked when information asymmetry was possible, when you could maintain different versions of yourself for different audiences. But that world no longer exists. People have unprecedented access to information about each other. And the perfect facade doesn't create trust, it destroys it. When everything looks too polished, people's threat detection systems activate. They start looking for what you're hiding, not believing what you're showing. Strategic vulnerability flips this dynamic entirely. Instead of hiding imperfections and hoping they won't be discovered, you selectively reveal them in ways that accelerate trust building. The key word here is strategic. This isn't about emotional dumping or trauma bonding. It's about understanding exactly which revelations build connection and which ones create distance, then deploying that knowledge systematically. The vulnerability value matrix provides a framework for making these decisions. Picture a grid with 4 quadrants. The horizontal axis runs from low to high relevance. How much does this vulnerability relate to the current situation or relationship? The vertical axis runs from low to high universality. How many people can relate to this experience? The sweet spot for strategic vulnerability sits in the high relevance, high universality quadrant. These are revelations that directly connect to the present moment, and that most people have experienced in some form. Sharing that you're nervous before a presentation. High relevance, high universality builds instant connection. Everyone has felt presentation nerves. Sharing your detailed medical history during that same presentation. Low relevance, low universality creates discomfort and distance. The matrix helps you evaluate any potential vulnerability before sharing it. If it's not relevant to the moment or relatable to your audience, save it for a more appropriate context. Calibrated disclosure takes this concept deeper by matching the depth of vulnerability to the stage of any relationship. Every relationship has what I call a vulnerability threshold, the level of personal revelation it can comfortably hold. Exceed this threshold, and you create awkwardness or burden. Stay too far below it, and you seem distant or fake. The art lies in finding and operating just at the threshold, pushing it slightly forward with each interaction. New professional relationships might have a vulnerability threshold of admitting you don't understand a technical term. 6 months later, that same relationship might comfortably hold discussion of career fears or family challenges. The progression must be gradual and mutual. You reveal slightly more than the current threshold, wait for reciprocation, then adjust accordingly. This creates a vulnerability spiral where trust deepens naturally through progressive revelation. The timing of vulnerability matters as much as the content. Strategic vulnerability follows what I call the 3-2-1 principle. Wait at least 3 positive interactions before introducing any vulnerability. Then share 2 strength-adjacent vulnerabilities before sharing one that feels more exposed. This ratio maintains the balance between competence and humanity that creates optimal trust. Strength-adjacent vulnerabilities are revelations that actually reinforce your capabilities while showing humanity. Admitting you're a perfectionist who sometimes spends too long on details shows vulnerability while signaling high standards. Sharing that you get so focused on solving problems that you sometimes forget to eat demonstrates both weakness and strength simultaneously. These paradoxical revelations are trust-building gold because they feel honest without undermining credibility. The delivery mechanism for strategic vulnerability determines its impact. Casual revelation during natural conversation lands differently than formal confession. The most effective vulnerability emerges organically from context, rather than being inserted artificially. If someone mentions struggling with a decision, sharing your own decision-making challenges feels natural. If you bring up your struggles apropos of nothing, it feels forced and potentially manipulative. Language precision transforms vulnerability from liability to asset. Instead of, "I'm terrible at this," try, "I'm still developing this skill." Instead of, "I don't know anything," try, "This is outside my current expertise." Instead of, "I'm struggling," try, "I'm working through some challenges." These linguistic shifts acknowledge vulnerability while maintaining agency and forward momentum. You're being honest without being self-defeating. The vulnerability sweet spot formula helps identify optimal sharing opportunities. Take any situation and evaluate 3 factors. Your competence in the area 110, the stakes involved 110, and your relationship depth with the audience 110. Multiply competence by relationship depth, then divide by stakes. Scores above 5 suggest safe vulnerability opportunities. Scores below 3 suggest waiting for better conditions. High competence and deep relationships can handle vulnerability, even in high-stakes situations. Low competence and shallow relationships require low stakes for vulnerability to build rather than erode trust. This formula prevents the common mistake of being vulnerable in situations where it undermines rather than enhances credibility. Physical vulnerability often builds trust faster than emotional vulnerability. Asking for help with something tangible, directions, technical assistance, a recommendation creates connection without emotional weight. These micro-vulnerabilities accumulate into comfort with larger revelations. The person who can ask for help finding the bathroom can eventually ask for help solving business problems. The vulnerability audit reveals patterns in your current approach. List the last 10 times you chose to hide something versus reveal it. What drove each decision? Fear, pride, strategic thinking. Most people discover they hide things that would actually build trust if revealed, and reveal things that create distance. This misalignment stems from emotional decision-making rather than strategic thinking. Proactive vulnerability prevents crisis vulnerability. When you strategically share challenges before they become problems, people become allies in solving them. Wait until challenges become crises, and the same revelations make you appear incompetent or deceptive. The executive who shares early that their team is struggling with a project gets support. The one who hides it until deadline gets scrutiny. Meta-vulnerability, being vulnerable about your vulnerability, creates profound connection. Saying, "I want to share something, but I'm nervous about how it will land," accomplishes multiple trust-building goals simultaneously. It shows self-awareness, creates anticipation, and invites the other person to create safe space for revelation. This technique works especially well when crossing into new vulnerability territory with someone. The vulnerability ladder provides a structured approach to deepening trust systematically. Start with preference vulnerabilities, admitting you don't like something popular. Progress to process vulnerabilities, sharing how you approach challenges. Advance to personal vulnerabilities, revealing fears or insecurities. And eventually reach purpose vulnerabilities, exposing core values and deep motivations. Each rung prepares for the next, creating sustainable trust acceleration. Cultural calibration affects vulnerability dramatically. What builds trust in one culture might destroy it in another. Some environments reward emotional transparency, while others respect emotional control. Some contexts welcome personal revelation, while others maintain strict boundaries. Strategic vulnerability requires reading these cultural codes and adjusting accordingly, not abandoning vulnerability but translating it appropriately. The recovery from vulnerability miscalculation follows predictable patterns. If you've overshared, acknowledge it briefly and redirect to the other person or the task at hand. Don't compound the error by apologizing extensively or explaining why you overshared. If you've undershared and seem cold, introduce small vulnerabilities consistently over time, rather than trying to compensate with one big revelation. Gender dynamics influence vulnerability reception. Men sharing emotional vulnerability might be seen as either brave or weak depending on context and delivery. Women sharing competence vulnerability might be seen as either humble or incompetent depending on the same factors. Strategic vulnerability requires awareness of these dynamics without being paralyzed by them. The solution is consistency, being strategically vulnerable in your chosen way regardless of reception variations. Vulnerability in written communication requires special consideration. Without tone and body language, written vulnerability can be misinterpreted easily. The solution is explicit framing. "I'm sharing this because I think transparency helps us work better together," provides context that prevents misinterpretation. Written vulnerability should be slightly less deep than verbal vulnerability would be in the same situation. The vulnerability competence seesaw must stay balanced. Too much vulnerability without demonstrated competence makes you seem weak. Too much competence without vulnerability makes you seem inhuman. The ratio should be roughly 3:1 demonstrations of capability for every strategic vulnerability. This maintains credibility while building connection. Group vulnerability dynamics differ from one-on-one dynamics. Being vulnerable in groups can accelerate trust with everyone present, but it also carries higher risk. The key is making your vulnerability gift to the group rather than a burden. Share struggles that others likely face too. Admit mistakes that others can learn from. Reveal uncertainties that give others permission to do the same. Vulnerability hangovers are real and manageable. That feeling of regret after sharing something personal is your brain's protective mechanism firing late. Instead of withdrawing after vulnerability, lean in slightly. Follow up with the person, reference what you shared matter-of-factly, demonstrate that you're not damaged by the revelation. This shows emotional resilience that actually enhances the trust built through vulnerability. Sequential vulnerability builds momentum. Each successful vulnerable moment makes the next one easier, both for you and for those experiencing your revelations. People begin expecting and appreciating your humanity rather than being surprised by it. This expectation shift changes the entire dynamic. Vulnerability becomes a strength rather than a risk. The vulnerability paradox reveals something counterintuitive. The people who seem strongest are often those most comfortable with strategic vulnerability. They've discovered that acknowledging limitations actually expands their power because people trust them with greater responsibilities. The person who can say, "I don't know," gets asked more questions. The person who can say, "I need help," gets offered more opportunities. Vulnerability without boundaries becomes destructive. Strategic vulnerability requires clear limits on what you share, with whom, and when. Create a clear list of topics that remain private regardless of strategic value. Having these boundaries paradoxically makes vulnerability feel safer, because you know exactly where the lines are. The compound interest of vulnerability works like trust mathematics. Each strategic vulnerability that lands well makes the next one more likely to succeed. People who've experienced your appropriate vulnerability become more vulnerable themselves, creating an upward spiral of deepening trust. Single acts of strategic vulnerability can transform relationships that have been surface level for years. Vulnerability scripts help navigate challenging revelations. Prepare frameworks for common vulnerability moments. Admitting mistakes, asking for help, acknowledging ignorance, expressing uncertainty. Having these scripts ready prevents fumbling in moments when vulnerability would be strategic, but feels uncomfortable. "I need to admit something that's difficult for me," becomes a reliable opening that creates space for vulnerability. The vulnerability mirror effect means people often match the level of vulnerability you demonstrate. Show appropriate vulnerability and others feel permission to do the same. This creates accelerated bonding that would take months or years to develop through normal interaction. You become the catalyst for deeper connection simply by going first. Retrospective vulnerability can be as powerful as real-time vulnerability. Sharing past struggles after you've overcome them demonstrates both humanity and growth. 2 years ago, "I couldn't have handled this conversation," acknowledges former limitation, while highlighting current capability. This temporal vulnerability builds trust without creating current concern. Professional vulnerability requires special navigation. The key is vulnerability about the work, not vulnerability that compromises the work. Sharing that you're unsure about a strategic direction invites collaboration. Sharing that you're too overwhelmed to function creates concern. The line is thin but crucial. Professional vulnerability should invite partnership, not rescue. Vulnerability velocity matters. Reveal too fast, and you seem unstable. Reveal too slow, and you seem guarded. The optimal pace is slightly faster than comfortable, but not so fast that it feels reckless. This creates productive tension that accelerates relationship development without triggering alarm systems. The vulnerability ecosystem you create affects everyone around you. When you model strategic vulnerability, you give others permission to be human. This creates psychological safety that improves team performance, relationship satisfaction, and creative output. Your strategic vulnerability doesn't just build trust with individuals, it transforms entire environments. Vulnerability recovery time decreases with practice. Initially, sharing strategic vulnerability might require days of recovery before you feel ready to be vulnerable again. With practice, this shrinks to hours, then minutes. Eventually, strategic vulnerability becomes as natural as any other communication tool, deployed effortlessly when conditions are right. Selective vulnerability isn't deception, it's wisdom. You don't owe everyone equal access to your inner world. Strategic vulnerability means being thoughtful about what you share with whom, ensuring that your revelations serve the relationship and situation, rather than simply satisfying an urge to be seen or understood. The vulnerability credit system operates invisibly but powerfully. Each appropriate vulnerability earns credits that can be spent on requests, mistakes, or boundaries. Build enough vulnerability credits and people forgive errors easily, accept requests readily, and respect boundaries automatically. These credits accumulate faster through strategic vulnerability than through years of perfect performance. Vulnerability without victimhood is the advanced practice. Sharing struggles without seeking sympathy. Admitting mistakes without seeking absolution. Acknowledging limitations without seeking rescue. This mature vulnerability builds trust because it demonstrates self-awareness without creating emotional labor for others. Physical space affects vulnerability reception. Sitting side by side makes vulnerability easier than facing each other directly. Walking conversations allow for vulnerability without intense eye contact. Virtual conversations might require more explicit framing of vulnerability to compensate for missing physical cues. Understanding these dynamics helps you choose optimal conditions for strategic revelation. The vulnerability preparation routine ensures strategic, rather than impulsive sharing. Before any significant vulnerability, ask yourself, will this serve the relationship? Is the timing appropriate? Am I sharing from a place of strength or seeking something? Can the other person reasonably respond to this? This quick mental checklist prevents vulnerability mistakes while encouraging appropriate openness. Vulnerability creates psychological contrast that makes other qualities more noticeable. Your competence seems more impressive when contrasted with acknowledged limitations. Your strength seems more genuine when contrasted with admitted struggles. Your successes seem more meaningful when contrasted with revealed failures. Strategic vulnerability doesn't diminish your strong qualities, it amplifies them through contrast. The quarter-turn principle suggests that optimal vulnerability is just slightly more open than expected. Not a half-turn into uncomfortable territory, not staying completely closed, but a quarter-turn more open than the situation typically demands. This creates pleasant surprise without shock, deepening without overwhelming. Vulnerability in conflict requires special skill. Admitting your contribution to a problem while maintaining boundaries around acceptable behavior models the balance between accountability and self-respect. I recognize I could have communicated better, and I need us to find a way forward that works for both of us demonstrates vulnerability while maintaining agency. The vulnerability investment compounds over time. Each strategic vulnerability is a deposit in a trust account that pays dividends indefinitely. People remember the moment you admitted you were wrong, asked for help, or shared a fear long after they forget perfect performances. These memories become the foundation of lasting trust that survives mistakes and misunderstandings. Vulnerability mastery means knowing not just when to be vulnerable, but when to help others be vulnerable. Creating space for others' strategic vulnerability through questions, silence, and explicit permission multiplies trust building beyond what you could achieve through your vulnerability alone. You become a trust catalyst, accelerating connection wherever you go. Strategic vulnerability transforms from technique to identity. You become someone known for appropriate openness, judicious sharing, and calibrated humanity. This reputation precedes you, making every new relationship easier to develop and every existing relationship deeper. The strategic deployment of vulnerability becomes your trust signature, the thing that makes you memorably, powerfully, authentically human. Chapter 4. The Reciprocity Engine. Value flows through networks like electricity through circuits, but most people act like isolated batteries, hoarding their resources until they're depleted and wondering why opportunities pass them by. The reciprocity engine changes this fundamental dynamic. Instead of trading favors like currency, you become a value conductor, creating circuits where benefits flow continuously between multiple parties while you sit at the center, trusted and indispensable. Trust arbitrage forms the foundation of this approach. Every person you know has excess capacity in some area and unmet needs in another area. The lawyer who needs web design help. The designer who needs legal advice. The marketer who needs coding support. The developer who needs marketing insights. These gaps represent arbitrage opportunities where you can create value without possessing any of these skills yourself, simply by connecting needs with solutions. The mechanics are surprisingly simple once you understand them. You don't need to be the person with all the answers. You need to be the person who knows who has the answers. This shift from provider to connector multiplies your value creation capacity infinitely. Instead of being limited by your personal skills and time, you're only limited by your ability to recognize patterns and make connections. Building your first reciprocity engine starts with mapping what I call your network value matrix. List 20 people you know reasonably well. For each person, identify 3 things: their superpower, what they're exceptional at; their struggle, what they consistently need help with; and their surplus, what they have in abundance, could be time, money, connections, or expertise. This matrix becomes your raw material for engineering reciprocity loops. The patterns emerge quickly once you start looking. The startup founder with funding connections, but no technical talent. The engineer with technical skills, but no business network. The salesperson with customer relationships, but no product expertise. Each person becomes both a value source and a value destination, and your role is to design the circuits that connect them. Simple reciprocity loops involve just 2 parties plus yourself. You introduce the graphic designer who needs clients to the business owner who needs design work. Both parties benefit, and you gain trust from both without doing any design work or paying any money. But the real power comes from complex reciprocity loops that involve 3, 4, or 5 parties, each contributing something different and receiving something valuable. Consider this real loop I recently created. A photographer needed website help. A web developer needed professional headshots. A business coach needed both photography and a website, but had limited budget. A corporate client needed business coaching. I connected them in a value circle where the corporate client paid the coach, who bartered with both the photographer and developer, who traded services with each other. Everyone got what they needed. Money only changed hands once, and I became the trusted center of a value creation system. The trust multiplication effect of reciprocity engines is extraordinary. Each successful connection builds trust with multiple parties simultaneously. When you facilitate a valuable introduction, both parties trust you more. When those parties succeed together, they credit you for the success. When they tell others about the connection, your reputation expands exponentially. One well-designed reciprocity loop can generate more trust than years of direct relationship building. Resource pooling represents the next level of reciprocity engineering. Instead of one-to-one connections, you create shared resource systems that benefit everyone involved. 5 consultants sharing a virtual assistant. 10 entrepreneurs sharing access to expensive software subscriptions. 20 professionals contributing to a shared knowledge base. These pools create efficiency gains that benefit everyone while positioning you as the trusted orchestrator. The architecture of these pools requires careful design. Clear contribution expectations prevent free riding. Transparent benefit distribution prevents resentment. Regular value audits ensure continued participation. The pool should feel like a privilege to join, not an obligation to maintain. Members should compete to contribute more, not calculate how to contribute less. Opportunity networks operate on similar principles, but focus on flowing opportunities rather than resources. Every member commits to sharing relevant opportunities with a network, even ones they can't personally pursue. The sales executive who spots a marketing role shares it immediately. The consultant who can't take a project refers it to the network. The entrepreneur who meets an investor outside their industry makes the introduction. These opportunity flows create an abundance mindset that becomes self-fulfilling. The critical insight is that opportunity sharing isn't zero-sum. When you share an opportunity you can't pursue, you lose nothing but gain everything: trust, reciprocal sharing, and reputation as a connector. The person who hoards opportunities they can't use gains nothing and loses trust. The mathematics favor radical generosity, but only when that generosity operates within a structured system. Creating your value inventory requires honest assessment of what you can contribute to reciprocity engines. Your value isn't limited to professional skills. Access to spaces, equipment, or tools has value. Connections to specific communities have value. Knowledge of niche topics has value. Time availability during specific hours has value. Even your questions have value. The naive question from an outsider often sparks breakthrough thinking for experts. The matching algorithm for reciprocity engines can be automated or intuitive. Some people create spreadsheets that track needs and offerings, automatically flagging potential matches. Others develop an intuitive sense for connections, pattern matching in real time during conversations. Both approaches work, but the key is consistency, regularly reviewing your network for connection opportunities, rather than waiting for them to appear. Reciprocity velocity determines the engine's power. A slow engine where connections happen monthly builds trust gradually. A fast engine where value exchanges occur weekly or daily creates rapid trust accumulation. The goal is to increase velocity without sacrificing quality. 3 high-value connections weekly outperform 10 low-value connections daily. The introduction protocol for reciprocity engines requires precision. Double opt-in introductions ensure both parties actually want the connection. Context-rich introductions explain why the connection makes sense. Warm introductions include specific conversation starters. The quality of your introductions determines whether people view you as a valuable connector or an annoying matchmaker. Here's the exact template that works. Sarah, meet David. Sarah just launched a sustainable fashion brand and needs help with supply chain optimization. David spent 10 years running operations for a major retailer and now consults on exactly these challenges. David, Sarah has already achieved impressive traction with zero marketing spend through pure word of mouth, which I thought you'd find interesting given your recent post about organic growth. I'll let you both take it from here, but happy to provide any context that would be helpful. The maintenance requirement for reciprocity engines is surprisingly low once they're running. Self-sustaining engines require only periodic check-ins to ensure value is flowing smoothly. The mistake most people make is overmanaging, trying to control every interaction. Trust the system you've created. If the value exchange is genuine, it will continue without your constant intervention. Value asymmetry is not only acceptable, but often preferable. The senior executive who mentors a junior employee receives less tangible value than they provide. But they receive intangible value: reputation, satisfaction, network expansion that might matter more to them than tangible returns. Understanding that different people value different things allows you to create exchanges that seem impossibly generous, yet leave everyone feeling they got the better deal. The reputation flywheel effect kicks in after you've facilitated about 10 successful connections. People start coming to you proactively with needs and offerings. You become known as the person who knows everyone and can make anything happen. This reputation becomes self-fulfilling. The more people believe you can create connections, the more they share with you, the more connections you can create. Geographic constraints matter less than ever for reciprocity engines. Virtual introductions can be as valuable as in-person ones. Digital resource sharing can be more efficient than physical sharing. Online opportunity networks can span continents. The key is choosing the right medium for each type of value exchange and being explicit about interaction expectations. The reciprocity credit system operates invisibly but powerfully. Every successful connection earns you credits with both parties. These credits can be spent on requests for help, introductions to others, or forgiveness for mistakes. But unlike traditional favors that create obligation, reciprocity credits feel positive for both parties. People want to help someone who's helped them succeed. Failure points in reciprocity engines are predictable and preventable. The most common is the taker who extracts value without contributing. The solution is graduated access. New members must contribute before they can receive. The second failure point is value imbalance, where some members contribute much more than others. Regular value audits and rebalancing keep the engine running smoothly. The third failure point is connection fatigue, where members feel overwhelmed by introductions. Quality control and pacing prevent this. Not every possible connection should be made. The art lies in identifying the connections with the highest probability of mutual value creation and spacing them appropriately. Scale limitations exist, but they're larger than most people assume. A single person can effectively maintain reciprocity engines involving 100-150 people if the systems are well designed. Beyond that, you need co-orchestrators or technology assistants. But even a 50-person reciprocity engine creates enormous value and trust-building capacity. The measurement framework for reciprocity engines tracks both quantitative and qualitative metrics. Quantitative: number of connections made, value exchanged, success rate of introductions. Qualitative: trust depth, reputation enhancement, network satisfaction. The combination reveals whether your engine is actually creating value or just creating activity. Specialization versus generalization presents a strategic choice. You can build reciprocity engines focused on specific industries, skills, or geographies. Or you can build broad engines that span disciplines. Specialized engines often have higher success rates, but limited scale. Generalized engines have more connection possibilities, but require more sophisticated matching. The trust transfer mechanism in reciprocity engines is remarkable. When you introduce two people who create value together, they transfer some of their mutual trust back to you. This trust transfer is proportional to the value created. Facilitate a connection that leads to a successful business partnership, and you gain enormous trust from both parties. Even small successful connections create measurable trust transfer. Communication rhythms keep reciprocity engines healthy. Weekly value shares where members report what they need and what they can offer. Monthly success stories that celebrate connections that worked. Quarterly reviews that assess engine health and make adjustments. These rhythms create momentum and accountability without feeling burdensome. The compound effect of reciprocity engines becomes apparent after 6 months. Your network doesn't just grow linearly, it grows exponentially as each person you connect introduces you to their network. Your reputation spreads through multiple channels simultaneously. Opportunities flow to you from directions you didn't expect. The engine becomes a trust generation machine that operates continuously. Technology amplification can multiply reciprocity engine effectiveness. Simple tools like shared spreadsheets for tracking needs and offerings. Communication platforms for facilitating introductions. CRM systems for managing relationship depth. The technology should be invisible, supporting the human connections rather than replacing them. The psychological impact of operating reciprocity engines transforms your worldview. Scarcity thinking becomes impossible when you're constantly witnessing value creation. Zero-sum mentality evaporates when you see everyone winning simultaneously. The abundance mindset isn't something you have to cultivate, it's the natural result of operating reciprocity engines. Cultural translation sometimes requires adjusting reciprocity engines for different contexts. Some cultures prefer indirect reciprocity, where value flows through multiple parties before returning. Others prefer direct exchanges with clear accounting. Understanding these preferences and designing accordingly ensures your engines work across cultural boundaries. The value creation formula for reciprocity engines is multiplicative. Number of participants, average value per participant, connection frequency, success rate equals sign total value created. Improving any variable improves total value, but improving multiple variables creates exponential growth. This mathematical reality drives strategic decisions about engine design. Reciprocity engines for specific life situations can be rapidly deployed. Moving to a new city. Create an engine connecting other recent arrivals who need similar things. Starting a business. Build an engine of other entrepreneurs sharing resources and referrals. Going through career transition. Construct an engine of professionals in similar transitions, sharing opportunities and support. The trust arbitrage: spread the difference between the trust you invest in making connections And the trust you receive from successful connections is consistently positive when engines are well designed. Small investments of trust in introducing strangers can yield massive returns when those introductions create significant value. Conflict resolution within reciprocity engines requires delicate handling. When connections don't work out, when value exchange feels imbalanced, when personality conflicts emerge, the solution isn't to avoid these situations, but to handle them transparently. Acknowledge when connections don't work. Adjust when value feels imbalanced. Mediate when conflicts emerge. This handling builds more trust than perfect connections would. The evolution from reciprocity engine operator to reciprocity engine platform happens naturally. Once you've built successful engines, others want to learn how. Teaching others to build their own engines multiplies value creation exponentially. You become not just a connector, but a connector of connectors, a meta-orchestrator of value creation. Time investment in reciprocity engines follows a reverse curve. Initial setup requires significant time, mapping networks, identifying patterns, making first connections. But once engines are running, time investment decreases while value creation continues. A mature engine might require just 2 hours weekly to maintain, while creating dozens of hours of value for participants. The selection criteria for engine participants matter enormously. Givers and matchers make engines thrive. Takers kill them. The ability to identify someone's reciprocity style early determines engine health. Simple tests during initial interactions reveal whether someone will contribute to or drain from the engine. Value documentation helps participants recognize the engine's benefit. Keep simple records of connections made, value created, problems solved. Share these periodically with participants. Not for scorekeeping but for appreciation. When people see the cumulative value created, their commitment to the engine deepens. The ripple effects of reciprocity engines extend far beyond direct participants. Each successful connection creates stories that spread. Each value exchange inspires others to be more generous. Each problem solved through the engine demonstrates a better way of operating. You're not just building trust for yourself, you're modeling a trust-building system others can replicate. Emergency activation of reciprocity engines demonstrates their true power. When someone in your engine faces a crisis medical emergency, job loss, family challenge, the entire engine can mobilize instantly. Resources, connections, and support flow rapidly through established channels. These moments of crisis response build unbreakable trust bonds. The transition from reciprocity to relationship happens organically within engines. What starts as value exchange evolves into genuine connection. The people you introduce become friends. The resources you share become foundations for collaboration. The opportunities you flow become partnerships. The engine creates real relationships, not just transactions. Reciprocity engine mastery means building systems that outlive your active involvement. The ultimate engine runs without you, creating value automatically through patterns and culture you've established. This isn't abandonment, it's architecture. You've built something that generates trust and value independently, freeing you to build new engines while previous ones continue enriching everyone involved. Chapter 5. Trust Recovery Protocols. Most people think broken trust is a death sentence for relationships, but they're wrong. Trust recovery, executed correctly, creates stronger bonds than existed before the break. The scar tissue of rebuilt trust is actually tougher than original trust, because it's been tested, repaired, and reinforced. Every trust failure contains the seeds of trust multiplication if you know how to plant and nurture them properly. The conventional response to trust breakdown is either denial or despair. People either pretend nothing happened, hoping time will magically heal the wound, or they accept the relationship as permanently damaged. Both approaches fail because they misunderstand the mechanics of trust recovery. Trust doesn't heal like skin passively over time. Trust rebuilds like muscle through deliberate, progressive loading that creates strength beyond the original capacity. The reset framework transforms trust failures into trust victories through 5 distinct phases: recognize, engage, solve, exceed, track. Each phase builds on the previous one, creating momentum that turns breakdown into breakthrough. Skip a phase or execute it poorly, and the entire recovery fails. Execute all 5 with precision, and you'll build trust that couldn't have existed without the initial failure. Recognition must happen fast and be specific. Generic acknowledgement like, "I messed up," or "mistakes were made," actually damages trust further because it signals either lack of awareness or unwillingness to confront reality. True recognition identifies exactly what broke, why it broke, and what impact the breakdown created. "I missed our meeting because I didn't put it in my calendar," which meant you waited for 30 minutes and couldn't prepare for your presentation, demonstrates the awareness necessary for trust recovery. The speed of recognition matters more than most people realize. Every hour between trust break and acknowledgement multiplies the recovery difficulty. Immediate recognition within minutes or hours often prevents permanent damage. Recognition within 24 hours keeps recovery manageable. Recognition after a week makes recovery significantly harder. Recognition after a month might be too late. The formula is simple. Recovery difficulty equals sign trust break severity hours before recognition. Recognition must also be proactive, not reactive. Acknowledging a trust break before the other person brings it up demonstrates awareness and integrity. Waiting until confronted suggests you hope to avoid accountability. The person who says, "I need to talk to you about something I did wrong," before being approached has already begun rebuilding trust through that act alone. Engagement means entering the discomfort zone deliberately and staying there until resolution. Most people try to minimize engagement: quick apology, brief discussion, move on. But trust recovery requires sustained engagement with the failure and its consequences. This doesn't mean wallowing or self-flagellation. It means creating space for full expression of impact, asking questions that deepen understanding, and demonstrating through presence that the relationship matters more than comfort. The engagement phase reveals whether someone wants relationship recovery or just personal absolution. People seeking absolution make the conversation about their guilt, their intentions, their feelings. People seeking recovery make it about impact, understanding, and co-creating solutions. The difference appears in questions asked. "Can you forgive me?" seeks absolution. "What do you need from me to move forward?" seeks recovery. Engagement duration should match breach severity. A missed coffee meeting might need 15 minutes of engaged discussion. A broken project commitment might need multiple conversations over days. A fundamental betrayal might require weeks of sustained engagement. Rushing through engagement because it's uncomfortable guarantees incomplete recovery. Trust rebuilds at the speed of the injured party, not the pace of the person who broke it. The solving phase is where most trust recovery attempts fail because people solve the wrong problem. They address surface symptoms rather than root causes. Someone who consistently misses deadlines doesn't just need better calendar management, they need to understand why they overcommit. Someone who breaks confidentiality doesn't just need reminder, not to gossip, they need to examine their relationship with information sharing. Surface solutions create surface recovery that breaks again under pressure. Solutions must be systematic, not heroic. Promising to try harder or do better isn't a solution, it's a wish. Real solutions create structures that make trust breaks difficult or impossible. If you broke trust by missing deadlines, the solution isn't working harder, but implementing project management systems with automated reminders and progress tracking. If you broke confidentiality, the solution isn't promising silence, but establishing clear protocols for what information you will and won't share. The accountability architecture you build during the solving phase determines recovery success. This architecture includes specific metrics for measuring improvement, regular check-ins to assess progress, and predetermined consequences for repeated breaks. I'll send you a weekly report showing all commitments made and their status creates accountability. I'll do better with communication creates nothing. Exceeding expectations is the accelerator that transforms trust recovery from repair to enhancement. Once you've recognized the break, engaged with its impact, and implemented solutions, the exceeding phase demonstrates transformation through action. This isn't about grand gestures or overcompensation. It's about consistent delivery above the newly established baseline, proving that the trust break catalyzed genuine growth. The overcorrection principle suggests delivering 130% of what's expected for a period equal to 3 times the original breach duration. If a trust break developed over a month, overcorrect for 3 months. This isn't punishment or penance, it's pattern interruption. You're replacing the neural pathway of disappointment with a stronger pathway of exceeded expectations. The brain needs repetition to overwrite established patterns. Overcorrection must be strategic, not scattershot. If you broke trust through poor communication, don't just communicate more, communicate with unprecedented clarity, frequency, and depth. If you broke trust through unreliability, don't just show up early, prepared, and with extra value. The overcorrection should directly address the area of trust breakdown while being sustainable enough to maintain for the required duration. The demonstration of change through exceeding must be visible without being performative. People can sense the difference between genuine transformation and theatrical apology. Real change appears in small, consistent actions, not grand occasional gestures. The person rebuilding trust after financial irresponsibility doesn't buy expensive apology gifts. They share monthly budget reports and spending decisions. The person recovering from emotional betrayal doesn't write poetry. They attend therapy and share their progress. Tracking creates the evidence that trust recovery is real, not imagined. Without measurement, both parties operate on feeling rather than fact. The person recovering feels like they've done enough. The person who was hurt feels like nothing has changed. Tracking provides objective evidence that bridges this perception gap and creates shared reality about progress. The metrics for trust recovery must be specific and measurable. Better communication can't be tracked. Daily check-in messages sent before noon can be. More reliability can't be measured. Percentage of commitments kept within promised timeframe can be. These metrics become the scoreboard that shows whether trust recovery is actually happening or just being discussed. Weekly trust recovery reviews create rhythm and accountability. Every week, review the metrics together. What improved? What declined? What patterns are emerging? These reviews prevent drift and ensure sustained focus on recovery. They also provide regular opportunities for course correction before small issues become large problems. The tracking period should extend beyond when trust feels recovered. Subjective feeling of trust recovery usually precedes actual behavior change solidification. Continue tracking for at least twice, as long as it takes to feel recovered. If trust feels rebuilt after 2 months, track for 4 months total. This extended tracking prevents premature declaration of victory that leads to relapse. Recovery velocity varies by relationship type and breach severity, but certain patterns are consistent. Minor breaches in new relationships can recover within weeks. Major breaches in established relationships might take months or years. The formula is roughly recovery time equals relationship depth, breach severity, recovery effort intensity. You can't control relationship depth or breach severity after the fact, but you can maximize recovery effort intensity. The compound effect of successful trust recovery extends far beyond the specific relationship. When you successfully recover from a trust break, multiple things happen. The person whose trust you rebuilt becomes an advocate because they've seen your character under pressure. Other people who witness the recovery gain confidence in your integrity. You build internal trust that you can handle failure constructively. Each successful recovery makes you more trustworthy, not less. Trust debt accumulates when breaks go unaddressed. Each unresolved trust break, no matter how small, adds to an invisible debt that eventually comes due. The colleague you never apologized to for taking credit. The friend you never acknowledged disappointing. The commitment you pretended didn't happen. These debts compound interest in the form of decreased willingness to trust and collaborate. The reset framework works retroactively. You can apply it to old trust breaks and clear accumulated debt. The archaeology of trust breaks, excavating old failures and addressing them, creates breakthrough moments in relationships. Reaching out to someone from years ago to acknowledge and address a trust break demonstrates character evolution. These retroactive recoveries often generate disproportionate trust because they're so unexpected. Nobody expects you to address something from the past that they've probably forgotten or written off. Prevention protocols embedded during recovery make future breaks less likely. Every trust recovery should include systematic changes that address not just the current break, but the category of potential breaks. If poor planning led to missed commitments, implement planning systems that prevent all future planning-related breaks. If emotional reactivity caused harsh words, develop emotional regulation practices that prevent all future emotional breaches. The paradox of trust recovery is that voluntary revelation of trust breaks builds more trust than perfect performance would have. When you proactively identify and address your own trust failures before others notice them, you demonstrate the highest level of integrity. This self-policing behavior signals that you can be trusted, even without external oversight. Recovery from different types of trust breaks requires different approaches. Competence breaks, failing at tasks, need skill development and system implementation. Character breaks, violating values, need deeper psychological work and value alignment. Care breaks, neglecting relationships, need priority restructuring and attention reallocation. Matching the recovery approach to the break type ensures effective rebuilding. Gender and cultural factors influence trust recovery reception. Some contexts value direct acknowledgement and quick action. Others prefer indirect approach and patient rebuilding. Some cultures see admission of failure as weakness. Others see it as strength. Reading these dynamics and adjusting your recovery approach accordingly ensures your efforts land effectively. The neuroscience of trust recovery reveals why the reset framework works. Recognition activates the prefrontal cortex, moving from emotional reaction to cognitive processing. Engagement stimulates mirror neurons that rebuild empathy. Solving engages the problem-solving networks that create future-focused thinking. Exceeding triggers reward pathways that overwrite negative associations. Tracking activates the pattern recognition systems that establish new trust baselines. Digital trust recovery requires special consideration. Online trust breaks often have permanent records, screenshots, archives, cached pages. Recovery must account for this permanence. Public breaks might require public acknowledgement. Written breaks need written recovery. The digital trail of recovery becomes part of your permanent trust record, so execute it thoughtfully. Trust recovery in professional contexts affects career trajectory significantly. A well-executed recovery from a professional trust break can actually accelerate career growth by demonstrating maturity, accountability, and growth capacity. A poorly executed recovery or avoided acknowledgement can create invisible ceilings that limit advancement for years. The stakes make professional trust recovery worth doing exceptionally well. The economics of trust recovery reveal compelling return on investment. The time and effort invested in proper trust recovery pays dividends through restored relationships, enhanced reputation, and prevented future breaks. The cost of not recovering lost opportunities, damaged relationships, limited collaboration far exceeds the investment required for proper recovery. Trust recovery isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Emotional regulation during trust recovery determines success or failure. The shame, guilt, and anxiety that accompany trust breaks can derail recovery efforts. Developing practices for emotional regulation, meditation, therapy, exercise, journaling ensures you can engage with recovery constructively rather than reactively. You can't recover trust while drowning in shame. The timeline architecture of trust recovery provides structure for what can feel like an ambiguous process. Week 1. Recognition and initial engagement. Weeks 2-3. Deep engagement and root cause analysis. Weeks 3-4. Solution design and implementation. Weeks 5-12. Exceeding phase with consistent overcorrection. Weeks 13-24. Sustained tracking and normalization. This timeline adjusts based on severity, but provides a framework for planning recovery. Recovery partners can accelerate trust rebuilding. Having someone who holds you accountable, provides perspective, and supports the process ensures you don't give up when it gets difficult. This partner could be a therapist, coach, mentor, or trusted friend. Their role isn't to excuse your behavior, but to ensure you follow through on recovery commitments. The graduation from trust recovery to trust enhancement happens when the recovering party no longer needs external structure to maintain trustworthiness. The systems become habits. The accountability becomes internal. The exceeding becomes standard. This graduation shouldn't be declared unilaterally, but recognized mutually when both parties agree recovery has transformed into enhancement. Trust recovery mastery means developing the capacity to recover quickly and completely from any trust break. This isn't about becoming careless with trust. It's about knowing that when breaks inevitably occur, because humans are imperfect, you have the skills to transform them into trust-building opportunities. This confidence paradoxically makes trust breaks less likely because you operate without the fear that makes people hide mistakes. The legacy of successful trust recovery extends across generations. Children who watch parents successfully recover from trust breaks learn that mistakes aren't permanent and relationships can heal. Colleagues who witness professional trust recovery learn that accountability is possible and valuable. Communities that see public trust recovery learn that integrity includes acknowledging and addressing failure, not just avoiding it. Trust recovery becomes a competitive advantage in any domain. The person who can quickly recognize, thoroughly address, and systematically recover from trust breaks operates with less friction than those who hide, deny, or incompletely address breaks. They move through life accumulating trust rather than trust debt, building rather than burning bridges, strengthening rather than weakening relationships with each challenge faced. Chapter 6. Scaling trust systems. Trust doesn't have to be personal to be powerful. The greatest trust builders create systems that generate trust automatically, consistently, and at scale even while they sleep. These systems transform trust from a resource you spend into an asset that multiplies itself. Instead of managing hundreds of individual relationships, you design frameworks that manage themselves, creating an infrastructure of reliability that operates without your constant attention. The limitation of personal trust building is mathematical. If every trust-building interaction takes 10 minutes, and you dedicate 3 hours daily to relationship building, you can manage 18 interactions. That's roughly 100 weekly, enough to maintain deep trust with maybe 20 people. But what about the other 180 people in your network? The 500 connections on your professional profile? The thousands who might encounter your work? Systems solve this scaling problem by creating trust-building mechanisms that work without your direct involvement. Trust templates represent the foundational technology of scaling. A template is a reusable framework for common trust-building situations that ensures consistency without requiring reinvention. Consider the simple act of following up after meeting someone new. Without a template, each follow-up requires decision-making. When to send it, what to include, how to phrase it. With a template, the structure is predetermined. You customize the specifics while the framework ensures nothing important gets missed. The anatomy of an effective trust template includes 5 components. Trigger conditions when to use it. Key elements what must be included. Customization points where to personalize. Success metrics how to measure effectiveness. And iteration protocol how to improve it. A networking follow-up template might trigger within 24 hours of meeting someone. Include a specific reference to your conversation and a valuable resource. Customize based on their expressed interests. Measure response rate and meeting conversion. And iterate based on what generates the best outcomes. Building your template library starts with identifying your 10 most common trust-building interactions. Initial meetings, project kickoffs, deadline communications, problem notifications, success celebrations, periodic check-ins, request responses, introduction facilitations, conflict resolutions, and completion confirmations. Each of these probably happens weekly or more. Each currently requires mental energy to execute. Templates transform them from energy drains into energy generators. The power emerges when templates stack into sequences. A new client sequence might include immediate confirmation template, 24-hour follow-up template, 1-week check-in template, milestone celebration template, and completion summary template. Each template triggers the next automatically. The client experiences consistent, thoughtful communication. You experience systematic relationship development without constant decision-making. Communication rhythms create predictability that builds trust at scale. Instead of random, reactive communication, you establish patterns people can count on. Monday morning status updates. Wednesday resource shares. Friday weekend summaries. These rhythms work because they answer questions before they're asked, address concerns before they're voiced, and demonstrate reliability before it's tested. The architecture of effective rhythms balances frequency with value. Daily rhythms work for critical relationships or projects, but can overwhelm broader networks. Weekly rhythms suit most professional relationships. Monthly rhythms maintain dormant ties. Quarterly rhythms keep extended networks warm. Annual rhythms acknowledge important dates and milestones. Each rhythm should deliver value proportional to its frequency. Automated trust touchpoints seem paradoxical. How can automation build human trust? The answer lies in thoughtful design. Automation handles the timing and logistics, while you provide the humanity and value. A system that reminds you to check in with clients on their business anniversary, pre-populated with their key achievements from the past year, enables personal connection at scale. The system ensures nothing gets missed. You ensure the connection feels genuine. The distinction between automation and authenticity is crucial. Automated sending of generic messages destroys trust. Automated reminding to send personal messages builds trust. The human element must remain human. The systematic element should be invisible. When someone receives your thoughtfully crafted message exactly when they needed encouragement, they don't need to know your system reminded you they were struggling. Trust delegates extend your trust-building capacity by empowering others to build trust on your behalf. This isn't about having assistants send messages with your name. It's about creating clear frameworks that allow team members, partners, or collaborators to act in ways that build trust for the entire system. When your team member solves a client problem, using your methodology, trust accrues to both the individual and the system. The selection and training of trust delegates requires careful attention. They must understand not just what to do, but why and how it builds trust. They need frameworks for common situations, but also judgment for unique ones. They should feel ownership of trust-building outcomes, not just task completion. The best trust delegates don't just follow your system, they improve it through their execution and insights. Decision frameworks ensure consistent trust-building choices across contexts and delegates. Instead of making every decision personally, you create criteria that guide decisions. A response time framework might specify urgent issues within 1 hour, important non-urgent within 4 hours, standard requests within 24 hours, non-essential within 1 week. Anyone operating within your system can apply these criteria, ensuring consistency that builds trust. The documentation of decision frameworks transforms tribal knowledge into institutional capability. Write down the principles behind your decisions. Clarify the trade-offs you're willing to make. Specify the exceptions you'll honor. This documentation becomes the operating manual that allows your trust system to function independently. New team members can quickly understand and apply your trust-building approach. Existing members can reference it when facing novel situations. Reputation management systems monitor and maintain trust at scale. You can't personally track how hundreds of people perceive your trustworthiness, but systems can aggregate signals and alert you to changes. A simple system might track response rates to your communications, referral generation, and repeat collaboration requests. Declining metrics signal trust erosion before it becomes critical. The feedback loops in reputation systems must be both sensitive and stable. Too sensitive, and you'll chase every minor fluctuation. Too stable, and you'll miss important trends. The solution is multiple time horizons. Daily monitoring for critical relationships, weekly for active projects, monthly for broader network health, quarterly for overall reputation trends. Each horizon has different intervention thresholds. Trust amplification through systems creates compound effects. When your morning check-in system ensures 20 people start their day, knowing their projects are on track, those 20 people operate with less anxiety and more confidence. They make better decisions, communicate more clearly, and trust more readily. Your single systematic action creates ripples that affect hundreds of secondary relationships. The measurement infrastructure for trust systems requires both quantitative and qualitative metrics. Quantitative: message response rates, referral generation, collaboration invitations, conflict frequency. Qualitative: sentiment in communications, depth of relationships, trust explicitly expressed, reputation feedback. The combination provides a comprehensive view of system health. System maintenance prevents trust degradation. Templates need updating as communication norms evolve. Rhythms need adjusting as relationships deepen or shift. Delegates need retraining as contexts change. Frameworks need refinement as you learn from edge cases. This maintenance isn't overhead, it's investment in system longevity and effectiveness. The integration of multiple trust systems creates synergies. Your template system feeds your rhythm system. Your rhythm system supports your delegate system. Your delegate system strengthens your reputation system. Each system makes the others more effective. The integrated whole becomes a trust-generating ecosystem that operates with minimal friction. Technology stack for trust systems can be surprisingly simple. A calendar for rhythms. A task manager for templates. A CRM for relationship tracking. A simple spreadsheet for metrics. The tools matter less than the design. Sophisticated technology with poor system design fails. Simple technology with excellent system design succeeds. Scale thresholds reveal when systems need evolution. A system that works for 50 relationships might break at 150. A framework perfect for a 3-person team might fail with 10 people. These thresholds aren't failures, they're growth indicators. Each threshold crossed means your trust-building capacity has expanded beyond your current system's capability. The documentation hierarchy for trust systems ensures both comprehension and utility. High-level principles guide philosophy. Mid-level frameworks guide decisions. Low-level templates guide actions. This hierarchy allows different stakeholders to engage at appropriate depth. Executives understand principles. Managers apply frameworks. Contributors execute templates. Error handling in trust systems prevents cascade failures. When a template generates negative response, when a rhythm feels overwhelming, when a delegate makes a trust-breaking decision, these errors need systematic response. Error logs track what went wrong. Root cause analysis identifies why. System updates prevent recurrence. Recovery protocols rebuild any damaged trust. The evolution from manual to systematic trust building follows predictable stages. Stage 1. Conscious incompetence, you realize your trust building is haphazard. Stage 2. Conscious competence, you deliberately build trust, but it requires constant attention. Stage 3. Systematic competence, your systems build trust with minimal oversight. Stage 4. Systematic excellence, your systems not only build trust, but improve themselves through feedback loops. Delegation frameworks for trust systems must balance autonomy with consistency. Too much autonomy and delegates might act in ways that erode trust. Too much control and delegates can't respond to unique situations appropriately. The solution is principles-based delegation, clear on outcomes and values, flexible on methods and tactics. The network effects of systematic trust building multiply impact exponentially. When your systems consistently deliver value, people don't just trust you, they recommend you. These recommendations come with transferred trust. The people who experience your systems become advocates for them. Your trust-building capacity expands through network propagation rather than personal effort. Quality assurance for trust systems ensures standards maintain over time and scale. Regular audits of template effectiveness. Periodic reviews of rhythm value. Systematic assessment of delegate performance. Continuous monitoring of reputation metrics. This quality assurance prevents the gradual degradation that kills most systems. The economics of systematic trust reveal compelling returns. The time invested in designing a template that saves 10 minutes per use, used weekly, saves over 8 hours annually. Multiply this across dozens of templates, and you've created hundreds of hours of capacity. This freed capacity can be invested in high-value trust-building activities that systems can't handle. Succession planning for trust systems ensures continuity beyond your involvement. Document not just what the systems do, but why they exist and how they evolve. Train multiple people in system operation and improvement. Create governance structures that can make decisions without you. This succession planning makes your trust systems valuable assets that can be transferred, sold, or inherited. The personalization paradox in trust systems requires careful navigation. Systems must be systematic enough to scale, but personal enough to feel genuine. The solution is systematic personalization, using systems to gather and track personal information that enables customized interaction. A system that remembers birthdays, preferences, and concerns can enable more personal interaction than pure memory ever could. Trust System Metrics Dashboard provides real-time visibility into system performance. Template usage and effectiveness. Rhythm completion and response rates. Delegate activity and outcomes. Reputation trends and anomalies. This dashboard becomes the control panel for managing trust at scale. It shows where systems work well and where they need attention. The feedback incorporation protocol ensures systems improve based on actual results, rather than theoretical optimization. Every week, review what worked and what didn't. Every month, implement improvements based on patterns. Every quarter, evaluate fundamental assumptions and adjust if necessary. This continuous improvement ensures systems evolve with changing contexts. Integration between trust systems and business systems multiplies effectiveness. When your CRM talks to your trust templates, when your project management triggers trust rhythms, when your communication platform supports trust frameworks, the integration removes friction and ensures consistency. Trust building becomes embedded in operations rather than added to them. The resilience design of trust systems ensures they survive disruption. What happens when technology fails? When key delegates leave? When contexts shift suddenly? Resilient systems have redundancy, graceful degradation, and recovery protocols. They bend without breaking and recover quickly from disruption. Cost-benefit analysis of trust systems reveals where to invest effort. Some systems generate massive returns with minimal investment. Others require significant resources for marginal improvement. Understanding these ratios helps you prioritize system development and maintenance. Focus on high-leverage systems first, then expand as capacity allows. The maturity model for trust systems provides a roadmap for development. Level 1. Ad hoc trust building with no systems. Level 2. Basic templates and rhythms. Level 3. Integrated systems with measurement. Level 4. Self-improving systems with delegation. Level 5. Autonomous systems that generate trust without oversight. Each level builds on the previous, creating a pathway from chaos to capability. Trust systems for specific contexts accelerate implementation. New business launch systems. Career transition systems. Geographic relocation systems. Team building systems. Relationship development systems. Each context has predictable trust-building needs that systems can address. Starting with proven context-specific systems reduces design time and increases success probability. The compound effect of systematic trust becomes undeniable after 6 months. Hundreds of consistent interactions. Thousands of trust-building touchpoints. Tens of thousands of positive micro-impressions. The cumulative impact transforms your reputation from someone who might be trustworthy to someone who systematically demonstrates trustworthiness at scale. System inheritance allows others to benefit from your trust infrastructure. The templates you develop, rhythms you establish, frameworks you document, these become assets others can adopt and adapt. Your systematic approach to trust becomes a model others can follow. The systems you build don't just scale your trust building, they enable others to scale theirs. The transformation from individual trust builder to systematic trust architect changes everything. You stop being limited by personal capacity. You stop losing trust to human inconsistency. You stop rebuilding the same trust repeatedly. Instead, you design systems that build trust continuously, consistently, and at scales you could never achieve personally. The systems become your trust signature, the systematic demonstration that you don't just value trust. You've built infrastructure to ensure it exists at every level of interaction.